One of the most simplest joys in life is having a conversation. I love talking. That's my favorite part. But apparently you're supposed to let the other party talk too. That's what makes it a conversation. News to me. And when the other person's talking, that's enjoyable. I like that part too. And when the other person is talking, they can talk about anything they want, right? And when they're talking, they're using words. That's apparently how you communicate vocally, audibly, through the mouth. Some might say orally, but then you got to keep an eye on those people. Keep them on a list, right? Because why are they using words like that when there's so many other ones, right? There's so many words out there. So that every word they use, it's their decision. It's their choice. They got to decide, I'm going to put that one out in the world, and it has a place in this conversation. But sometimes a word gets out there, right? It gets into a conversation, and it feels very deliberate. It feels like a choice. Like I said, every word is a choice. But for the most part, when you're, just rambling on, you're not thinking too much about what you're saying. And depending on your comfortability with the other party, maybe you're not putting too much thought into that because you feel okay being vulnerable, being free, just speaking your mind. So then you're not thinking too much about your words. But let's just say you're talking to someone you don't know that well. And so sure, a lot of the words are deliberate because you're really thinking things through, right? You're trying to make a good impression. But every so often there is a word in there that feels extra deliberate. It feels like a special choice. And that's when someone uses a big word. Now, what is a big word, right? It's all relative. To a kid, a big word might be difference. To an adult, it could be supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Haha, great one, Gauruv. It could be zeitgeist, right? That's a weird one. Why does anyone use that? There's probably normal words that can convey that same idea. But sometimes people use those words. And we'll take that for an example. Zeitgeist. What does that mean? It just kind of means like the relevant topics right now. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. I hope that's what it means. Or I look like a dummy. I look like someone that doesn't use big words. I look like someone that thinks a big word is difference. So what happens then, right? When someone makes this choice, this deliberate choice to use a big word, you look at them differently, right? You judge them because you're like, why'd you do that? There's so many words, like I said, in the English language, and there's also multiple languages. It's not just English. You got so many of them. And out of all the words out there, they chose to use that one. Unbelievable, right? Those people suck. You and I would never do that, right? We're exempt from that. There's no way that we would commit a crime that big. Except I did. I did actually do that this week and I caught myself. I was talking to someone at work and I used the word inevitably. Now you might be like, oh, inevitably. That's not a big word, right? It's not. But it feels like a big word. Like everyone knows what inevitably means. Because in life, we inevitably learn what it means. But see, even that sentence, I could have used different words. Why did I say inevitably? I could have said, at some point in your life, you learn what that word is. But I chose. See, there's even, I had to choose which one was right. And first I went wrong because I feel comfortable, right? We've garnered a safe space here. And that's even made me slip up a little bit. But I apologize. I got to be on my A game here. But right there, I chose to say inevitably when I could have been like, oh yeah, you come around to it. You learn what that word is. We all know what it is. And this week I said inevitably. And a lot of people know what that word means, right? I think a lot of people do. So then why do I think it's a big word? Why did I catch myself saying it? What's the big deal? What's the offense, Gauruv? This is like jaywalking. This is the jaywalking of speaking. Because yeah, it's illegal in some states, but I mean, who's getting hurt here, right? If everyone's careful in the interaction, it should be fine. A little slap on the wrist from the parents, and then you keep it moving, right? Ball up top. But it has too many syllables. That's my problem. I was talking to someone at work, and I forgot exactly the context of what we were saying, but I was like, oh yeah, inevitably this will happen. I'm like, what am I doing? And I think it also didn't help the setting that I was in. Like if you're joking around with friends and you say, inevitably I think that might happen, it feels more natural. But the tone and the setting at which the word was used, it felt very serious. It felt professional and it felt out of place. And so I caught myself. I was like, Garv, what are you doing? Why'd you say that? You could have used different words. You could have said, yeah, like I said, oh yeah, I think like down the road that will happen without a doubt. See, there's too many words even. Maybe that's why I said it. But something about pulling out that many syllables, it felt braggy, right? What are you doing with that? And that's the thing. It's not a complex word, but it sounds complex. Like there are little words that I don't think people know. Like, do you know what a tome is? Tome. Tome. Do you know what that is? It's a humorous word for a big book. But no one says that, right? No one says, oh, can you pass me that tome? It's used for humorous effect. It's even so sarcastic of a word. It's so dressed up of a word, so old fashioned, that yeah, when you look it up, it says humorous. You know, sometimes up top it says, oh, figurative, or like country of origin or whatever. For tome, it says humorous because that's how ridiculous of a word it is. Because normal people would say big book. Can you hand me that big book? But some people, right? They choose to use a different word for humorous effect. Sometimes. Sometimes people do it to be funny, but other times people do it to try to appear smart, right? They put on a front that they're like, oh, yes, I opened a dictionary one time and I picked a handful of words and now I use them a lot. And that's my life hack here. If you're stupid, which I'm not going to assume anything, but you are listening to this podcast, if you are a stupid person, right? Or you think you are, if you want to get out of this trap, feeling like a dumbass, just learn a few words. Basically, then this is my real advice here, foolproof method, read a book. Touch grass, all of the above. Read a book and write down every word you don't know in that book. And then look up the words. And then, this is going above and beyond, I don't even think you would do this, but make flashcards with those words and study them every day. And then boom, you got like 20 or 30 new words, you know, and then over time, they slowly find their ways into your conversation and people start to think, oh my God, you're well read. Why did you use that word? That's so interesting. But don't get carried away, okay? Act within your means, okay? Know your place. Because if you start going out in public and saying pulchritudinous, what are you doing? Do you want people to hate you? Because guess what? You have achieved it. Success. You're there, bud. So sure, fast track hatred and use that word, pulchritudinous. What does that mean, by the way? I think it just means beautiful. I've seen it on social media sometimes. I think most people are being sarcastic, but some people are like, oh my God, he called me pulchritudinous. I'm like, that's not... He looked up beautiful and I was like, all right, synonyms, and then just went way to the bottom. To the bottom where they like kind of gray them out because they're like, yeah, this one's not really a synonym, but you can, okay, yeah, you used it. All right, that's a choice. And that's what it is. It's a choice. It feels manipulative. Why did you use that word? Why are you trying to convey intellect to me? You should just be able to give that off. You should have the aura of intellect. You shouldn't be so forthcoming with this shit because it feels like you're coming on to me. And step back if you're doing some shit like that. And like I said, this can be used to, you know, put on some faux intellect, right? It's like wearing a faux fur coat. You didn't kill the animal, but you're getting the credit. That's all looking up a few words does. It gives you the credit without actually having to be smart. You didn't kill the fox, but people are like, oh wow, that's some fox fur that you're brandishing, huh? Look at that. That was a choice. I have to think about it because I don't use that word. I don't even know. There's like 30% of me that doesn't even think he used that word correctly. I think I fucked that one up, but I pulled the trigger because I want to be smart. I want people to see me as smart because if I'm not smart, what am I, right? Only smart people have value. Other people that have value, I've heard, are like funny people. And that's another thing you can use synonyms for. This is the easiest way to like, this is one of those like cheap tricks to look funny. Don't even help with that, Garv. No, I mean to sound funny or be funny. Use synonyms. Like, what's a common phrase, right? People always say, you know, the gall of that person, right? What's another word for gall? Temerity. Temerity is a classic word. that no one uses. So it's not a classic word. It's an old word that you might find on some tome on some shelf, right? But the common phrase is audacity. People say, oh, the audacity of that person. And if you follow that up with, oh, I know, the gall, the temerity of them, 6 out of 10 times they'll probably laugh because they're like, why the fuck do you know that word? Because no normal person knows the word temerity. What is temerity? It is a synonym of audacity, of gall. And so there you go. You can use that one. And that's like an easy party trick, right? That would probably shut the party down. As in the party would end because they're like, who invited the fucking nerd? But that's the thing. They would look at you as a nerd. And how exciting is that? To appear smart to strangers, that's all we can ask for in this life. For a bunch of people to look at us and be like, oh, they probably did okay in school. Because if we're not doing it for that reason, then what are we doing it for at all? Words are important, right? We use them every day. And like I said, using those words, it feels like a choice. So you got to be careful. You got to be very conscious of the words you use because then people might get the wrong idea. For example, this is how funny words are. If we say we're going to the drugstore, it feels innocent, right? But if you say the word drugs, immediately everyone's on high alert. They're like, oh, drugs? Whoa, whoa, you know? So why is that? It's the context of it all. It's the connotation of a word. That's another fucking word that no one knows the definition of. Connotation? I know what that is, Gauruv. No. The opposite. The antonym, right? Denotation. Wait, what the fuck does denotation mean? Denotation literally just means dictionary definition. So annotation, right? Or sorry, oh my god, I'm getting mixed up over here. I before E except after who gives a shit, right? Or something like that. Connotation. Connotation is like the context of a thing, like using context clues, or like what a word means in context. But the denotation of a word, that's like the dictionary definition. And it's like, why say denotation? Just say dictionary definition. That's in layman terms, right? The colloquial way of saying it. So why the fuck do people keep using weird big words? It doesn't make sense. But because words have power. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but if you call me a bitch, I'm going to cry. I think that's the saying. When you say drugstore, innocent, right? But drugs, uh-oh, alert the popo, whoop whoop. And that's how important words are. Which is interesting, right? Because when you hear drugs, we immediately go to the bad stuff. We immediately go to the drugs that you can't buy at a drugstore. And I think that's the difference. I think that's why drugs has a bad connotation. Is because they're typically associated with, ooh, the crazy stuff, right? Whereas like a drugstore, it's like, oh, you have a migraine, here's a little fucking tablet you can take that'll make you feel better. I think that's the importance of context and connotation. So yeah, whoever said this podcast wasn't for intellectuals, you would be mistaken, sir or madame or anyone really that's stepping to me. Do you think there are any pet Instagram owners that try to get a replacement after the original pet dies? Like they just try to keep it going? Because like I've seen some people run those pages and they're lucrative. But I'm like, that has a life to it. It's like a business that like you have an estimation of like, oh, when the business will end. And like you can only ride out their death for so long, right? Like you can sell farewell merch, like, oh, farewell, Bucky or whatever you name your dog. And you can do that for a year while you're coping and everything. You're wiping your tears with some Ben Franks. But then what do you do after that? When everyone's like, we're kind of like, Bucky's gone and we forgot about him, so whatever. So would they maybe just try to... would they try to just replace Bucky? But then you run the risk, right? Because someone's going to be like, hey, wait, why is your Pomeranian 27 years old? And you're like, hey, fucking Bucky eats well, okay? He intermittent fast. he sleeps a lot of the day, and during that sleep, he's not eating. Okay, he's very health conscious, and you can see it in his figure. You're just projecting. You're jealous of the little guy, aren't you? Well, Bucky, say your catchphrase. Yep. Bucky says, "Fucky you." Yep, and we're gonna put that on a shirt, and people are gonna buy it, and they're gonna love it. But I do wonder, would they just try to get a replacement, and then it'd be so impossible, right? Because like the dog is, it's like near the end of its life, so you can't just come up with a new one. So then it makes me wonder, maybe like when the dog starts graying, would they swap one in? Like dogs, what do they live to, right? Somewhere between like 8 to 15 years, we'll just say. So maybe around, we'll just go with like a 15-year-old dog. Maybe at like year 10, you swap in like a 2-year-old dog, because dogs, they grow fast and they get there quick. That's maybe a little aggressive. 2 years old, maybe swap them in with a 4-year-old dog, and then boom, you just got 6 years back. And that's the thing, you're like, Garv, that's fucked up. That's so dark. But people that run pet accounts, I mean, they have to be a certain type of person too. And I don't mean the innocent, your mom's friend on Facebook. I'm talking about the people that have millions of followers for their pet. They have to have like some kind of backup plan, right? Because like I said, it's a business where you can see the end. A lot of businesses, you're like, I hope this is generating, generational wealth, and hopefully my kids will take this over, or will give this to someone else, and then the family will own part of it, and it'll run in for perpetuity, right? And then my kids and their kids won't have to worry for their entire lives. But with a dog, it's no, you can see it. You can see right there that, that's when it's going to end. You don't know exactly, but you have a ballpark, right? A lot of companies, they like to do an 8-quarter roadmap. When it comes to a pet, eventually one of those 8-quarter roadmaps is going to be like, oh, Bucky kicked the bucket, huh? And you got to account for that. What is it called? Like sales strategy from there on out? Because now your mascot's dead. This is like if the Chicago Bulls during MJ's era lost the bull, right? I know MJ's the big attraction, but the bull, Benny the Bull, right? He's the heart of the team. Because MJ hasn't played basketball in decades now, right? I don't know if I'm right about that. Time moves funny now. But Benny the Bull, he's still there. And they're doing the same thing. They're changing the man inside. Benny the Bull is forever. But who operates him, that's the magic of it all. So I wonder, do these pet accounts, are they going to follow the same format as a mascot? Where sure, you root for the same mascot. It's always Bucky, but it's a different Bucky inside the suit. Because that's what they used to do in the past, right? They used to have, colleges still do it now because they're weirdos, but colleges take a real horse and they're like, this is our mascot. And you're like, what the fuck? Or this is our bulldog. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then sometimes they turn him into a big plush guy. And they make him really cartoony and they put him on merch. But some colleges, they like to keep it old-fashioned. And they just keep having a real-life animal. And that's the thing. These pet accounts, why can't they do the same thing? Why can't they adopt the same method? Like, why can't they just keep getting a Pomeranian, then keep naming it Bucky and be like, this is Bucky now. You guys love Bucky? This is him. And everyone's like, we like the first Bucky because of his underbite. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. We're getting like surgery on this guy. He's going to look the same. And they're like, oh, cool. Yeah. Then I'm going to shut my brain off and just act like, yeah, this is Bucky. And I'm going to keep liking those little guys' posts. I love seeing his post at my desk job. Well, this little dog doesn't even know that he has financial freedom. Because that's the thing. If I got the strength, the chutzpah, the steam behind a pet account, I would not want that shit to end. That's an unlimited money glitch. Because unlike, like a child actor, That's a bad gig because then the child grows up and they realize like, oh my God, you're stealing from me. And you're like, oh, damn it. You're a conscious person. But like a pet account, you can exploit the fuck out of them and no one cares. They're like, oh, that's cute. But a kid grows up and now you're watching a documentary on HBO and you're like, oh my God, I cannot watch those shows now. Everything is fucked. I looked at it through a different lens. But pet accounts are awesome because there's no room for morals. You can just enjoy it forever. So I wonder, do you think they do that? That's fucked. Will they ever, do you think anyone's ever done the 99 bottles of beer on the wall song? Do you think they've done that fully? Because that's a song, again, that's another thing we all know. But do you think you'll ever do it in your life? Like, you get the rules, right? You start at 99. 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. One fell down, and then there were 98 bottles of beer on the wall. I'm sure I shortened it, but that's like the thing, right? And you do that 99 times until there are no bottles of beer on the wall. Are you ever going to do that? I thought about that the other day. I saw some like ad or some TikTok. I can't tell nowadays. I know it says sponsored in the bottom, but I don't know what I'm watching. I'm an old person now. I just see everything. I'm like, yep, that's true. And they're like, that's Grand Theft Auto. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, who gives a shit anymore? With VR, we're going to live in Grand Theft Auto. I don't know. I don't. When VR gets really good, we're going to start taking work meetings inside Grand Theft Auto. You see that store right there? That's going to be our new conference room. Teams no more. Now Grand Theft Auto. The Los Santos conference room. But I saw this, I think it was just a TikTok. I don't think it was an ad. But it was a bunch of guys singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall. And I was like, oh yeah, I know what that song is. And I was like, I don't think I've ever gotten past like 96. And it got me wondering, I get it. Again, it's like a dog. I can see the end, right? I know it's roughly around there. I can actually get more exact with 99 bottles of beer on the wall. Because it's at 0. It's pretty clear, actually. But I'm like, in my lifetime, am I ever going to sing that song fully through? And I thought about it. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Because try singing it. By the time you get to 85, you're like, yeah, whatever. It's like I'm sure you need the same mindset as like a marathon runner. You just have to keep telling yourself, all right, one more. And you just keep doing it. But at some point, it's just annoying. But I think it does have that same thing as like a joke that's beaten to death. There's some jokes where they start funny, they die, they get annoying, and then they get funny again with repetition. Like there's some jokes, if you just keep beating them to death, yes, there's a point where you're like, oh, this sucks. Family Guy does this very well. Family Guy loves to just beat jokes to death, but then keep beating them to where, oh my God, it's kind of like funny again, because you're like, how are they still doing this? Are they like 23 seasons in or something? It's like, come on, what are we doing? But that's kind of what 99 bottles of beer on the wall is, right? Because I would assume by the time you hit 60, you probably want to like murder one of your friends. But by the time you get to 40, you're probably so like, you probably reach like a singer's high where you're like, all right, we're already more than halfway through. I think I can just power through because it is now, we're in the home stretch, right? I'm sure that last 20 feels amazing, but that only feels amazing because you put the work in. It's really a metaphor for life, right? Life is 99 bottles of beer. And sure, if you look at it as, oh, fuck, I got to get to 0, it's going to be miserable. But if you look at it as, oh my God, I get to sing this song, then you feel amazing. And even if you do feel like it's a grind, there's a certain point where you're like, oh my God, look at all I've done. And the stuff you've done makes you realize how amazing it is that you only have this amount left, right? And you do start to appreciate it. You enjoy those last 20 because you're like, well, I just did 80. And now I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Isn't it so beautiful? This is actually brings us to today's sponsor, Coors Light. No, no sponsors on this. Can you imagine that? Let's talk about dessert. This is important. Dessert. Dessert is such a vulnerable activity. And that's why I think, in sometimes comedy movies or, like cartoons, animation, they always sometimes play this classic little bit where they have someone drop an ice cream cone. The most famous example, or most like present example to me, is in Lilo and Stitch. They have that really sunburnt guy with the sunglasses, and he always drops his mint chocolate chip ice cream. And it's funny, it bangs, it goes hard, 10 times out of 10. But something about it, whenever I do see a character like drop their ice cream cone, they don't even drop the cone, the scoop like falls off of it. It feels so sad. Like, I know it's funny, but it like hits me in this deep, like, sad place. And I was like, why is that? And I was like, oh, it's because eating dessert is like such an innocent activity. It takes you back to childhood, right? And you're like kind of being very vulnerable when you're eating something like a cup of ice cream because you're a kid again. And so losing that, that you're opening yourself up to this eating ice cream, and then losing the thing, you're like, oh my God. It's almost like tripping a kid in public. It feels bad. You're like, oh my God, I just hurt a kid. And that's what it is. Like, ice cream is an extension of like childhood. And so when you see someone drop their childhood, it feels really bad. And so yes, it's funny watching the clumsy characters drop their dessert, but it fills me with a deep sadness. And I think that's why, because it's so vulnerable. And that's also why, right? People have talked about this with, dating on social media. People always talk about like, oh, if my person I'm going out on a date with orders ice cream, that's an ick. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry, do you not want your life partner to want dessert? And I get that there's a lot of like optics to look at with this, where it's like, oh, why are they ordering dessert on a first date? I get if you're in a long-term relationship with someone, dessert holds a different weight, right? A lot of weight above the belt. Because people don't care for themselves anymore when they're in a relationship. They start to settle with themselves, right? This is what I've heard. No, I don't believe that. I think that's just a cop-out. When people are like, oh yeah, you know us. We're putting on the LBs and we just kind of don't bathe anymore because we love each other. I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine to gain weight. What is the second part? What was that? Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. You don't watch your... Okay, well that's not... That's not... You don't get a pass for that because you have this. Those things are mutually independent. See, that's another... I don't know what that means. I know it's like it's a debate term, right? Or it's like you can use that in arguments where those things are mutually exclusive, mutually independent. I don't know what those mean. I know if someone says mutually exclusive, I blank out for a second and I now can't follow the rest of their conversation. Because it's something that smart people say. It's what faux smart people say. Because just say the real thing. Why are you saying mutually exclusive? That shit pisses me off, man. But it's a highly debated topic, right? It's a very contentious thing, dessert, when it comes to dating and relationships. Not even relationships. Relationships, you guys are very secure with your dessert. You guys are always going to get it. You're going to be happy. Actually, in fact, even in relationships, I took it off the table, but let's put it right back on. Even in relationships, it is a contentious thing because there's that trend of, we'll just use straight couples. Girlfriends want ice cream and they're like, oh, boyfriend, let's get ice cream. And the guy's like, yeah, I'll go. I'm not going to get anything. And then she freaks out. She has a fucking meltdown. And guys love to play fucking... I don't even know if they're playing at this point. They love to be fucking stupid and be like, I don't see what the big deal is. Get the fucking ice cream, dude. I can't explain it, but it makes sense. And I think that is a litmus test, right? It is a mark of a person about how much resistance they put to that idea. No, I don't get what the idea is. You just get it. I'll sit here and watch you. Dessert's such a fucking weird thing, and I think it all goes back to like childhood. It's such a vulnerable thing to do. You want to do it with other people and you always want to do it, but it just feels embarrassing. Imagine you eat like a nice dinner. You're sitting across from someone you're interested in, and then they're like, "So, before I bring the check out, can we get maybe a dessert for the table?" And now imagine looking at them and being like, "Yeah, can I have a little bit of peach sherbet?" And they're like, "Yeah, squirt. Anything for you, bud." It's like, "Oh fuck." I feel like an idiot. But that's the thing. Peach sherbet is good. Again, one of the past episodes, I talked about if I go to an ice cream place, I'm not walking out with sherbet. I'm not anti sherbet. It's just if I'm going to an ice cream place, I'm not getting sherbet. They're really it's mutually exclusive. My hate for sherbet in ice cream shops. No, see, I don't even know what the fuck that sentence meant. But I said it, and you kind of, if you say with enough confidence, I get the other person thinking, oh, they kind of know what they're talking about. But that's the thing, you feel so little when you look up and you're like, "Could I have the tiramisu?" And you're like, "Yeah, of course, bud." You want a little bit of like espresso to go with that? Squirt? And you're like, "Oh, sure. That would probably pair very nicely." Oh, all right, bud. That's a lot of coffee for you. Bedtime's not coming up. And you're like, "Oh, that's a good point. I'll take a glass of whole milk with it." Mm. But then the other person looks at you and then they could want dessert so deeply as you want it, but they put up this front like they're too cool for dessert. Well, guess what? If you're so cool, get the fuck out of here. Oh, if you're so cool, well, guess what? It's winter right now. So if you're so cool, go outside because it's really cool outside. So go back there because you're not welcome here. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. But I don't get it. I don't get this discourse around dessert. Why can't we all just admit it's awesome and get it? I'm always the guy that will say, we'll do dessert. I don't care who the other person is, unless it's like work or something, then I'm not going to be the guy that's like, oh fuck. I just remembered I am that guy at work because I literally did that. I think 2 years ago, our team went to a team lunch at BJ's. And if you go to BJ's, they got Pazookies. You have to do a Pazookie if you go to BJ's. So we all do lunch, and the waiter comes around. She says, "You guys want to do dessert?" And I look at my boss, and he's like, "Your choice." I was like, the whole lunch we were making like jokes about Pazookies. I was like, "But is it in the budget?" He's like, "I mean, if you want it, you get it." And I'm like, "All right, first of all, don't." You know what I want, but you know what I'm also asking here, man. Can I get it? Is that like okay fiscally? Like, can we do that? And he was like, "Your choice." I was like, "All right, that's enough of a green light for me. I will take a mini chocolate chip Pazookie." And I thought it was just going to be me. And I was okay with that. I did it with the full confidence of someone that was going to sit there and eat it alone. But when I tell you, 3 of my coworkers also ordered Pazookies after me, I am a renaissance man. I'm a pioneer because I charted the path. I led the way. I gave them the strength to do what they couldn't do themselves. I'm a crutch and a superhero. And that's the thing. I do that. I offer that for you. Let me be soft so that you can be strong. Hey, yo. What did he just say? But that's what I offer. That's one of my many benefits is that I will always order the dessert. And same with like drinks, right? When I go to a place and they have cocktails, I will, with a straight face, ask the waiter, "What is the most fruity cocktail you have?" I want that shit. What tastes like punch? Huh? What is basically a juice box, but $18? I want that. Hit me up with that. And that's what I do. That's the vibe I bring to the function. Sugar, some spice, but everything nice. Because if you're with me, we're getting dessert, no matter what. And I think we should destigmatize. I don't even know if I'm using that word correctly. I think I did. I'm like 90% confident. But we should destigmatize dessert. It's enough. It's enough. Embrace your inner child, right? Doesn't Kendall Jenner say that? She said, I do this thing. My therapist, who I'm probably paying a lot of money. Oh my God. Imagine being a Kardashian's therapist. Wow. That would. Who got that gig? That's such a nice gig, I bet. Anyways, the only nicer gig than that would be having like a pet account on Instagram. Anyways. But Kendall Jenner, she says, I have a picture of young Kendall, Kenny, I call her. And I always look at that picture first thing in the morning. And I use that to remind myself that I shouldn't say anything bad about myself because if I am, I'm saying it to that girl. And I think whenever we go out in public and we stop ourselves from getting dessert or hitting. Yes, I'll go with that. I've said it. Now let's commit. I'm hitting that inner child. I'm beating myself up. Which in turn is hurting my inner child. And I think we got to stop that shit. Get it. Get the flan. Get the creme brulee. Who are you trying to impress? Because if you ask me, I am thoroughly disappointed in you. If I go to dinner with you and they come and they say, you guys want to do dessert? And you go, no. Unless we have a second location plan for dessert, I'm disappointed in you. I may not show it. In fact, I won't show it because I'm not a confrontational person. But I'll have it in there. Like I said, I'm an elephant. I got these big ears, and elephants never forget. I won't hold it against you, but I've taken note. I've taken note. You're not going to pull that one over me. Because how could you? Elephants are huge. Can you imagine getting over one of those suckers? Anyways, thank you so much for watching. And I will talk at you next week. Okay?